Hello, and welcome back to the Entangled Health Podcast. I'm your host, Madison Murphy Barney, and today is, for now, the conclusion of the lessons from um, Other Species series we've been doing. It's been a great run, and it's time to talk about some other things, but I've so enjoyed it, and we're really ending on a bang here with one of, I think, the coolest species in the world. I've recently learned quite a bit about them, I guess, in the past couple of years. Because when I first moved to Vermont, I really wanted to befriend some of them because I learned how you can really have a relationship with this animal and how smart they are and funny and the sense of humor they have. So we'll get into that in a minute. But first, just wanted to welcome you into book a call. If you have any questions about where it might make sense to go in terms of what the Center for Story and Strategy has on offer. We have so many great things going on. Something I don't talk about a ton is the suite of trainings that we have. There are 16 trainings in it, all about community engagement and deep listening and storytelling and how to share stories and keep a healthy story bank and just so many other things. Um, and yeah, and I mean, there's 16 different trainings within there, and that is a part of, you can buy those um individually, like as a unit, like you can just have the trainings, or you can also have the trainings and then come into our office hours that are twice a month for that, for like what you learn in the trainings that can help you implement it and give you suggestions on your own context and the own thing, what your organization is navigating. So it's just a great way in, and to the office hours are also a great thing to add on to the end of a story lab session for that implementation support. And so it's just, yeah, that sort of lighter touch, not a retainer engagement, but still consistent one-on-one um, questions answered and things like that twice a month. So that's available to you. If you have any questions, let me know. And otherwise, you can book a call and we can just chat about where you're at, what you're thinking about, what you want to make possible, and how we can do that together. So here we go. Our last species on this. Let's see, what have we talked about? We've talked about bees, orb weaver spiders, beavers, the three sisters, mushrooms, cedar, and now for lucky number 7, we're going to be talking about crows. So we've covered so much in this series: the circulating, the web building, the reciprocity, the engineering, the rooting, just all of these things. Um, and the invisible labor. And all of this requires trust, right? Trust is something I talk about so much in my work and is so care to the work that health and justice organizations are doing. And trust is in part due to memory, right? Communities remember. They remember the organization that did the listening and never came back. They remember the survey that went nowhere. They remember their story that got taken and used without consent. And they remember who follows through, who's come through for their community, who was there for their grandmother, who was there for the generations before them. All of that is in community and in individual memory. And so, what does that have to do with crows? Well, um, one thing that I think is really key that I want to talk about is this listening fatigue. And I see this a lot with clients. I'll come into communities to do, to lay the groundwork for this work or do community mapping before building a strategy and things like this. And there are some communities that are just done talking to organizations because they've talked before and nothing has changed. And that fatigue makes so much sense, right? Like none of us are down to just give and see nothing change. And so we have to earn that trust, right? And this isn't something we can solve with better messaging. It's just really a signal that the community's memory is that of broken trust and that of sort of over extraction. And um, yeah, and that's where lessons from crows come in. And for us, for in many indigenous traditions, crows and ravens are associated with intelligence and memory and the communication between realms. They're messengers, they're observers, they're keepers of knowledge, and they're so smart. And I'm excited to share. Maybe but there's so many things about them that I've learned over the past years that have just truly amazed me. So crows recognize individual human faces and remember whether a specific person was friendly or kind. There are researchers who have trapped and banded crows that were scolded by those same crows years later. Like they came back and gave them a talking to. And crows who were never trapped but saw the interaction also then learned to scold the researcher. So the memory spreads, right? And that's great. That's intelligence. That's efficiency. We want messages to spread through communities, trust to spread, or mistrust. And there was this podcast I loved for a while, and it was about gossip and gossip gets such a bad rap, but gossip is also a tool that has kept people so safe for so long and been a really protective, connective, important thing. And we need that in community to share our learnings, share what's safe, what isn't, and yeah, and share what's going on. And so I think like crows remind me of this a little bit of the need to like talk and how word spreads and how community trust spreads. And that's why when I'm working with clients, so often I'm like, who are the and this word has really changed meaning in the past years, but who are the influencers in your communities? Who are the people who um, operate a really trusted food shelf? Who are the people who are the religious leaders who people, go to in all times of their life, the celebrations, the mourning, the grief? Who are the people who's the hairstylist who knows everything and everyone and is like a hub of community information and trust. Like those are the types of people who our organizations need to engage with authentically to then, begin this path of deep listening and this trust building and in order to have insight into what the community wants and needs when there has been breaches of trust or even if not, just to increase what might be going great. Um, and so crows pass threat information to other crows and to their offspring. So just know that a grudge held by one crow becomes a grudge held by the whole flock and then the next generation. So there's like this inherited knowledge. And we see this too all the time, right, in humans. And the important other side of this is that crows also remember kindness. There are people who consistently feed crows who have been brought gifts in return, buttons, bits of glass, small shiny objects that are left at feeding spots in exchange. There's a sense of reciprocity and gift giving and delight and celebration and sharing in abundance. And they are also really sophisticated tool users and problem solvers. There are some crows that can fashion tools from sticks and leaves, and then use those to um, extract insects. And crows can also have shown many times that they can solve multi-step puzzles and that they innovate. Um, Crows hold what researchers call funerals. So when a crow dies, others gather around the body and they make loud calls and they're learning what happened so that they can avoid the same fate. And they are like studying this loss collectively. And they also they protect each other as a group. When there's a threat, they call in reinforcements and they protect together and they respond as collective and really coordinated and really um yeah, central to, organized in a way. And it's important to note that crows thrive in complex and changing environments. They are some of the most adaptable species on the planet, and they can adjust their behaviors based on context through like reading situations and making strategic decisions about when to act and when to wait, and what the best thing to do in is each context that they find themselves in. And they also maintain really complex alliances with other groups. Young crows spend years with their family group learning, social dynamics before they go out on their own as well. So, again, this is the episode about trust and reputation and trust building and why we can't skip the relational groundwork that happen and what happens, when it's already been burned. It's not to say it can't be repaired. Again, crows teach us that they remember breaches of trust, but they also remember kindness. And there's like ways to remedy and there's ways to navigate complexity and navigate changing environments. So, the main, probably very obvious teaching here, right, is that the community remembers. Crows don't forget a face, and communities don't forget organizations that have like extracted their stories and disappeared. They don't forget things that have gone nowhere, promises that have been broken. And so, just as crows, pass this knowledge along to the next generation, communities also do. We protect each other, right? We share, we make sure that everybody knows what's safe and what isn't safe and what our experiences were. And so we just need to know that our organizational reputation arrives before we do, and that that's a really intelligent and refined system. And so we need to then understand who to go to and who to build trust with and who to be in community with in order to regain trust or rebuild trust or strengthen trust if we're already operating from without a trust deficit. Um, and just like this part of that, right, is this listening fatigue that I hear all the time of communities stop engaging with organizational outreach. That's not apathy. It's not that they don't care. Everybody cares about the organization that's responsible for caring for their health or their social services or, the justice system in their community. They care about all of that. And listening fatigue is that the community's memory is protecting them from repeated extraction. So it's going in. It's if there's been over and over instances of extraction, like it's smart for them to not have that trust, and we want to honor that, and then learn the ways to rebuild it and take the time to rebuild it. Um, through conversation, through continued presence, through showing up, and becoming sort of, it's not, the answer isn't then to like write a better survey or have a flashier engagement event. It's about to show up where people already are, show that we can build trust, show that we are trustworthy, and sort of become that face that the crow associates with kindness and brings gifts to, and things like that. It's that consistency and that follow through behavior over time, which is just so, yeah, it's so intelligent, right? Like that's how we would want our communities to be operating. And just this understanding, right, that reciprocity begets more reciprocity. Just as crows like bring gifts to people who feed them, they don't do it after one time, they do it after consistency. And so there's this case, right, for showing up over and over. And for, having multiple events and showing up where community already is to do the listening there and making it as easy as possible on them and as genuine as possible on them, and understanding that reciprocity isn't a one-off thing. It's for continued building and continued ebb and flow and continued repair. And when our work itself returns value to the community begins to um, have that trust. And when we have that trust, that's where we get, the insights and connections and the type of wisdom from the community that we can build reliable and effective and impactful strategy off of, while also making sure it's in the highest service of community because it's based on what we've heard from them and what they need and want. Um, and you know, I think one really important part too is this like context changing, right? And this context shifting. And we've talked about this in other episodes with other species as well. But crows adjust their behavior based on the situation. They're not running the same approaches and same strategies for safety and wellness in every environment. And um, that's what, we all need to do too in our work of like, we need to adapt to where we are, and we can look at the data and the numbers from other places. And of course, learn from that really important research. And then also understand how we can contextualize it through doing those story lab sessions and doing that listening and doing the learning, all of the context of where we are that we can learn so that we can um, root in something real, right? Root in the actual lived experience and not the sort of like expected or assumed experience of folks. And, it's the difference between like taking a finding from um, uh, urban health department and then trying to just like shrink it down and be like, okay, this will work at, we can use the same strategy just with less numbers at the rural federally qualified health center. Like that's not how it works, right? We need that context. We need to know where we are, who's there, who's important in the sense that like the community trusts them. and they're who, people go to for information and insights and conversations and things like that. So it's all about that, like the core of what makes story driven strategy so important is that it's that context rebalancer. It takes all of our important public health knowledge or social justice knowledge to, all of that, those frameworks and that insight are so important. And then we need to take that knowledge and then also apply a story driven listening based strategy to it so that we can know where and how to apply it specifically with where we are and who we're supporting. And yeah, and just understanding that like our communities are the brilliant forces behind the work we do, and they have all of the intelligence and wisdom into what they need to be well and what's missing and what's working and what's not working, and that they, brilliantly can't be fooled by, half-hearted efforts or continually dropped balls and things like that. It's just this reminder that we are accountable and as we should be accountable. And sometimes it can feel like, oh, they should just trust me because this, that, and the other thing. But just remember, the lessons of crows of like the trust can be rebuilt like after repair and after consistency and continued showing up and continued support. So, what I want you to walk away thinking about is, asking, what does the community remember about your organization? This I find is really key in the work I do with like in birthing centers, because like that's so central to people, right? Like where they gave birth, where they were given birth to, where their grandmother gave birth. And with disappearance of birthing centers, people lose so much trust. Because if what they remember is like the origin of their family there and their, family members being born there, like there's so many family memories, and that's true with like small hospitals and large hospitals and social justice organizations that have long history. It's like we need to know what is remembered about our organization, what's been passed down about it. And if you've been, if the organization you work for, even if it isn't you specifically, or even if it is the face of, extraction and community harm, you know, what steps do you need to take in order to move forward, and how can this deep listening work and story driven strategy, how can that support you? And the answer, it can in many ways, but it isn't like we don't want to be asking how we can gain trust again with a new campaign or a better message again. It's that like willingness to sit down and to listen and to grapple and to have honest conversation and do that slow consistent work of becoming the face that the crow trusts, right? Um, and then, for organizations, who have a fair amount of community trust, wonder, thinking about, what are you learning from loss? We talked about how crows handle loss together and process it together and learn from it together. When something doesn't work, are you gathering around it and studying it together? Are you learning from it? Are you alchemizing it? Are you using all of the lessons learned? Because when we don't learn from things that don't work, we repeat them, right? We need to understand that. And so we don't want to just be moving on to the next thing and hoping nobody remembers. Just remember, the crow always remembers and the community remembers, and that remembrance is passed down. And we just need to be paying attention, to what that memory is telling us. And yeah, thank you so much for talking about crows. I just find them so fascinating, and have just grown a relationship with them in the past couple of years, and that I had really hoped for when upon moving to a more rural place. And I hope the crows get you thinking a little bit with how clever they are, and they have this sense of humor, and they have this way to they this like figuring it out, and this deep like almost like prove it energy, which I like, like prove that you're going to keep showing up, prove that we should trust you. And like that's the kind of intelligence we want our communities to have, right? We want them to protect themselves and each other. And so I'm just so grateful we can learn this lesson from crows who do it in such a funny and like interesting way. And so similarly to how we do it, right? So, thank you for coming on this journey with me through these 7 species. It's been such a joy, and I look forward to being back in touch soon. And hope you're taking care, and look forward to speaking with those of you who book a call and can't wait to learn more about the work you're doing and how I can support it. All right. Have the best day.